Have you ever wondered what happened to meritocracy? We live in a world now of big companies and big government in which political correctness and not offending someone seems to be a higher skill than actual merit. Well, I'm proud to say that I worked for a company on Wall Street in the late 80s that was an actual meritocracy, which I argue is the essence and the spirit of Wall Street. And what I want to do in this video is extract from that experience 3 principles for success in life and in business. Now, I was one of 5 out of 40,000 people selected for the Salomon Brothers trading training program. And for 3 months, we were hammered with both bond math and the culture of merit, what I call the spirit of the traditional Wall Street. And through this indoctrination, I developed my philosophy of not only business, but also of life. And I've used it many times over. Sometimes with success, sometimes less so when the environment wasn't a meritocracy. But maybe you can use these principles yourself. So let me start by giving some context. Salomon Brothers was the largest bond trading firm in the world. Now, bonds are what Wall Street is really about, not equities. Bonds trade in the trillions of dollars, not in the hundreds of millions of dollars like in the stock market. And pension funds and money managers, central banks primarily buy bonds, which are strips of cash flow. And they don't primarily buy equities, and that's something that's not commonly known. Well, Salomon was called the King of Wall Street because it was the world's largest bond trader, as well as having a very respectable corporate finance and investment banking unit. And one of the things that impressed me was the caliber of the people that show up when you have a true meritocracy. We had Myron Scholes, co-developer of the Black-Scholes model, which developed for the first time quantification of options and derivatives. He used to show up at our regular weekly meetings. We had John Merriweather, who invented the fixed income derivatives arbitrage. We had Michael Bloomberg, who developed the Bloomberg terminal, which was really email tens of years before email showed up on the internet. We had Louis Ranieri, who developed the mortgage-backed security market. Mark Rich, who developed the spot trading market in oil. I could go on, but the point is you're working with the best in the world, and that elevates your game. So what are some of the principles I learned? There's 3 of them I'd like to discuss today. One, the first principle is we pay you to perform, not to try. Now, the example I was given is of a woman called Becky, who was a trainee 2 years before my program. Now, she was doing a large bond trade, a couple of $100 million, if my memory serves me correctly, and she missed a Saturday and an interest payment, which cost the client $23 million. So what did Salomon do? Salomon said, it was our mistake, we'll make you whole. So they paid back the $23 million and probably gave some extra to the client. But what they did to Becky was they fired her on the spot by bringing up some guards and escorting her out of the building. And for trainees in their mid-20s, that was kind of shocking. It was kind of hard. But the lesson we learned is there are no second chances in life. You might get another chance that's similar, but there are no second chances in life. Do it right the first time and do it right every time. That is called being a professional. And there are no excuses. We don't care if you've had a bad day. We don't care if you're sorry. Sorry doesn't repair damage. So that is principle number 1. Principle number 2 is that you are an amoeba and you need to earn your own keep. Now, what does that mean? At Salomon Brothers, and this was articulated in the book Liar's Poker by Michael Lewis, at Salomon Brothers, you had a hierarchy of evolution. You had amoebas who were below life forms, which is what a trainee is. That's somebody who doesn't earn their keep. You had a man, which is somebody who breaks even for the firm. So if you have most desks cost about $1 million. So if you make $1 million for the firm, you're breaking even, you're a man. Then you become a hitter, which is somebody who makes multiples of what they cost the firm, maybe 10 million, maybe 20 million. And then there's a BSD, a big swinging D. And I can let you imagine what the word D stands for. So in this environment, one of those BSDs was a guy called Tony. And I went up to Tony one day. He was called Fat Tony, and the reason is because he used to eat pizza all day. And so I went up to Fat Tony to ask him a question one day, and he said to me, "What's your name?" So I gave him my name, and he called me over. And with his mouth 1 inch from my ear, he said, "F off." I was blown away. Nobody'd ever talked to me that way before. So I was a little shaken up. But the next day I'm walking by his desk, and he goes, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I said, "I'm fine." He goes, "Here's $100. Go get me some cigars." So the interesting part is because we were amoebas, most of the trainees basically got cigars and lunch for the traders as a way to add value, despite the fact that we all had master's degrees or higher. And so I bring him his cigar, and he's really friendly. I said, "Fat Tony, why are you being so friendly? Yesterday you told me to F off." He goes, "Listen, buddy, it was nothing personal. You interrupted me 2 minutes before the government unemployment numbers, which move bonds by billions of dollars." And he said, "The lesson you want to take away is if you ever disturb somebody, know in advance what's going on in their mind. Understand them better than they understand themselves." And that was really something that stuck with me throughout my career. And then the third lesson is that you ignore truth at your own expense. There was a BSD called Paul Moser, and he tried to corner the U.S. government bond market, which you're not supposed to do. And he kept that fact hidden from his boss, Merriweather. Well, when Merriweather heard about it, he said to Paul, "This was a career-limiting move for you." And he fired him on the spot. Guards came up, walked him out the building. So the lesson we got out of that is billions of dollars of bonds get traded just on a person's say-so. There's no contracts. They just get traded based on your reputation. And the most valuable asset you really have is that you'll do what you said you're going to do, that you speak the truth. And if that doesn't happen, you've got a problem. And so ignore the truth at your own risk. Now, having articulated these three principles, let me sum them for you. We pay you to perform, not to try. You're an amoeba until you earn your own keep, and ignore truth at your own risk. Having summarized this, let's give you two conclusions. The first is question the assumptions, and the second is let's apply the principles to finding a job. So the first principle of questioning assumptions relates to a woman called Marilyn. So I was up in, I think it was Quebec City, at a ceremony. My mother was getting one of her many awards, and I had asked or promised a client that I'd get them some numbers on Friday. It was Thursday morning, and somebody called Marilyn was supposed to give me the numbers by Thursday morning, but she hadn't. So I called her up and I said, "Marilyn, what's the problem?" And she said, "You know what? I got a lot going on. I got to go away for the weekend. I have to pack up the kids. I have to go away, so I'm just not going to be able to get these numbers." So I said to her, "Marilyn, you either get me these numbers like you said you would, or I'm going to find somebody who can." Now, in this large organization I was working at, that of course offended Marilyn. So she went to her boss went to my boss, and my boss chewed me up. And the lesson I learned is that in a non-meritocracy, some of these principles don't work. So you got to be careful where you apply them. The second thing, though, is that you can apply these principles in certain situations. So I have a friend called PA. He actually goes by the initials P and something else, but I'll change his identity by calling him PA. He's a talented guy, engineer by training, and he was a big IT professional in a big bank. He gets laid off and he's looking for a job. So I say to him, PA, why don't you apply the principles of Salomon Brothers? What you do is you do some research on a company, you go to a senior executive and you say, look, you've got this problem. And I figure out similar problems for big banks, and I'm going to be near you Wednesday at 2 p.m. If you want, I could tell you what other people are doing to solve your problem. Now, that's the way you look for a job. Why is that? It's basically Fat Tony's principle. Understand the client better than they understand themselves. Understand the problems they have and offer to solve those problems. As long as you can solve those problems, you don't ask for something like a job. You deliver value, value for value exchange. So those are the principles I learned on Wall Street with Salomon Brothers. What are some principles you've learned? Would these principles be of use to you? When are they of use and when are they not of use? Let us know in the comments.